Use the limit definition of the derivative to find the derivative of the function g of x equals 3 plus the square root of x. So we have our limit definition of the derivative, and that's f prime of x is equal to the limit as delta x approaches 0 of f of x plus delta x minus f of x divided by delta x. Now this is the slope of the secant line here, and we're taking the limit as delta x goes to 0. So another way of writing this is the limit as delta x goes to 0 of delta y over delta x. But we're using the limit definition here on the left. So for this problem, we have f prime of x should equal the limit as delta x goes to 0. Okay, so we'll replace the x in our function with a x plus delta x. So that's 3 plus the square root of x plus delta x minus the original function, 3 plus square root of x, all divided by delta x. Okay, so it looks like we have a positive 3 and a minus 3. They cancel. So we can rewrite this as f prime of x is equal to the limit as delta x goes to 0 of the square root x plus delta x minus the square root of x, all divided by delta x. So we've seen this before in limit problems. One common approach when we have a situation like this is to multiply by the conjugate. In this case, the conjugate of the numerator, which would be the square root of x plus delta x plus the square root of x divided by itself plus square root of x. So what we're trying to do here is cancel off this delta x, this factor of delta x in the denominator. Okay, so we'll multiply out limit as delta x goes to 0. Okay, so first times first, it's the square root of x plus delta x times itself squared. So the square and the square root cancel. So that'll give us an x plus delta x. And the cross terms will cancel. That's the whole point of the conjugate. Outer times outer, inner times inner, are equal and opposite in sign. One's positive, one's negative, so they cancel. And so I'll have last times last. The square root of x times the square root of x is x. One's positive, one's negative, so we have a minus x. And that's all divided by, so it looks like we have a delta x times the square root of x plus delta x plus the square root of x. Oh, it's looking good. So the x's cancel. We have a positive and a negative x. So we have f prime of x is equal to the limit as delta x goes to 0. So we have delta x on top. That's the only thing left over. And we have delta x times square root of x plus delta x plus square root of x. And now we could cancel. We could cancel these delta x's, and that's what we needed to do. Delta x on top, delta x on the bottom. So now we're at the limit as delta x goes to 0. We're left with a 1 divided by the square root of x plus delta x plus the square root of x. Now we're at a step where we could finally do some calculus. It's been all algebra up to this point. Now we can evaluate the limit. Now we can plug in 0 for delta x. Okay, so that's 1 over the square root of x plus 0 plus the square root of x, or simply 1 over 2 times the square root of x. Okay, and that does it for this problem. So when f of x is equal to 3 plus the square root of x, we have the derivative f prime of x is equal to 1 over 2 root x.